Councilman Carroll and Councilman Woods. We've got the rest of the council members here: Ben Reynolds, CJ Small, Corey Penn, Joel Daves, and our attorney is Jim Matchison, as well as various other staff member who are here today, and administrative officials. So we call the meeting because of a lot of incidents have happened recently with either drag racing or red light running and some tragic accidents. So we wanted to call everybody together and just get some updates on what we're doing, how it's working, and if there are any other ideas that may be out there in order to try to resolve some of these issues. So I want to start, if I can, with the drag racing. And that's something we've heard about a lot recently, especially around the Africatown area. And I know, Chief, you all were looking at doing some monitoring and things like that. So if you don't mind just going ahead and starting with that topic today.
Yes, ma'am. So we got complaints. We did a traffic study over 5 days, and over 8,700 vehicles passed through there, and 31% of them were speeding. Some over 100 miles an hour. So we've been out there doing some enforcement. We've also continued to close patrols. We got no other complaints about it, but we also continue to close patrols. And at the end of each shift, the supervisor has to send the captain what's found during that shift. So we are still doing enforcement. We'll continue to do so. The roadway, I believe, still needs some type of slowing device. That I have to leave up to traffic engineering.
There was some media coverage about this too, so that probably helped when you all started your monitoring. How often are you able to have your officers out there?
Several times a week. Traffic goes out there and works it, and then we have patrol that's close patrolling it along with the supervisors. And we've not seen any actual racing, but there's evidence on the street out there that it's happened.
And you have your folks out there at various times of the day, the evening?
Yes, based on that study, that's where we target what the highest volume is.
Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Carroll, you got anything?
No, but I guess we're going to have to continue the patrolling, because I guess once we stop, then it'll resume. I've got to be honest about this racing. I can't remember the exact year, whether it was 2005 or 2006. Jim, you were on the police department then when the overpass was being built for 165. Mm-hmm. They were racing up there on that quarter-mile stretch, and we had to stop it. But then they moved to another area. I mean, in all actuality, it doesn't seem like we're going to stop this racing. They're going to race. So I think that at some point, we need to find some other outlet for those that are building these cars and are looking to race. Maybe we need to find a place where we could lease or rent or have them and give them time and space to actually race these cars off the streets somewhere. I mean, that's an option, I would think. Something, because, that culture, whether we move them from Paper Mill Road, from I-165 to somewhere out in Irvington, I think they're going to find a place to do it, which is dangerous. So as we move forward, we might want to consider some type of space where they actually could do this somewhat legally. You know what I mean? Maybe lease a space. Well, I mean, I don't know if the Speedway is available right now and how it's being rented. I know it hadn't been very much activity out there, but it's just an idea to get them off our streets.
Well, until then, we'll keep our enforcement up.
The director looked like he had
I said,
Director.
If you look, this is not a problem that is unique to Mobile. Right. They're from LA to Miami. They're doing street races or closing down interstate roads. It is kind of made popular by, there's a TV show that basically where you go out, when the TV shows are doing on private tracks, they go out and do the quarter-mile racing. Unless it's somebody private puts up one, I don't think there's not going to be money in at least the public safety budget to purchase a drag racing track.
Well, I didn't say it come from your budget director, but I mean, I'm saying that somehow, somewhere we may need to find a way to do this to where it lessens the occasion of injury, lessens the occasion of some type of unintended consequence, whether it be criminal or some type of unintended fight that may metastasize into a bigger argument, or escalate is another word, into a bigger incident.
I agree with you. And I mean, anything that we can help, with finding that out. But right now, high speed on our streets, just public dangers, like you said, it can create a lot more havoc than just the people involved in the race.
Okay, Josh? Corey?
Thank you, Vice President. I know you, Chief, you stated that 31% were over the speed limit and some up to 100 miles per hour. What is the guidelines? I guess, I mean, I don't know how many you pulled over or ticketed, but what, I guess, is it at a certain point there get arrested or a ticket for going past a certain speed, or?
It's a citable offense.
Okay. No matter what's the speed.
Then they'll have to go in front of a court for the reckless driving. The judge will make a decision on that.
Okay. Is it a certain speed that it is arrestable? Like, it don't matter how?
Not unless they're endangering someone else.
How fast that? I guess he's asking how fast is that above the speed limit when it becomes reckless endangerment?
Well, it doesn't have to be above the speed limit to be reckless endangerment, but at this point, we know they are above the speed limit, so that point would be addressed.
Okay. So what is, I guess, what would be considered reckless endangerment while speeding? What would have to happen?
25 miles an hour over.
Okay.
What is the speed limit out there?
John, is the speed limit 40 out there?
40?
I believe
45?
it's 40. I didn't write that down to bring with me.
Are we seeing examples of this drag racing other parts of the city now? Or is it primarily,
We haven't had any reports. I had no reports until Mr. Carroll came to me a few weeks ago. Not even about Paper Mill Road.
oh, wow, okay. Yeah. CJ?
Thank you, Chairman. The question is that I understand that you had stated earlier that you all have not caught, I guess the people that was doing over 100 miles per hour.
No, sir. They were called in the study. The JMAR unit was out there doing a traffic study.
Mhm.
We didn't actually catch those individuals, but we know they were there.
So my question is, the city of our size, do we have enough traffic officers, out there?
Well, based on my manpower, I have the best I can. Now, I will tell you, if we continue on the rate we're going with holding our attrition down, that by next year, I will be adding to the traffic unit, hopefully by March.
But the size of our city, are we average or below average, above average? Or,
I would have to look at other cities to tell you for sure.
all right, thank you.
Ben?
Yeah, I want to this question of reckless endangerment. I'm no expert, but this says section 13A 624. A person commits the crime of reckless endangerment if he recklessly engages in conduct which creates a substantial risk of serious physical injury to another person. If there are two cars racing each other on the line and then they take off abruptly, would that meet the element of reckless endangerment? Possibly.
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 Yeah, we'd have to get a magistrate's opinion on it, but yes,
Okay.
because he is participating willingly. So I'd have to get a magistrate's ruling.
Oh, I got you. Okay, just my thought was just that, if you penalize these folks that are doing it, a handful of, I'm sure they all talk and
Oh, yeah.
amongst each other, and you really, drop the hammer on them out there doing it, then we might, nip it in the bud for a period. And I'm sure you got that in mind, but that's just where my thought would be. So, and Mobile International Speedway is open for business to the best of my knowledge.
Joel?
People been drag racing since there were cars.
True.
I can remember my father telling me about he used to drag race with his friends. And so that would have been in the 40s. So they've been drag race. We're not going to end drag racing, illegal drag racing. We're not going to end it. We can't, and I'm not saying we don't try. I'm not saying we don't try. But you kick them off of Paper Mill Road, they're just going to go somewhere else.
Sure.
Yeah.
And we could have all the police officers in the world, and they're not going to catch them. we just have to do the best job we can. Thank you,
I
Chief,
agree
for
with you.
looking into
Yes.
this.
William, did you have something else?
The thought of the street, is there something that we can do to slow down the access to that quarter mile? Are there, those little speed bumps that we have on the interstates when we're approaching a speed zone or something like that? Is it something that we could do intermittently to prevent that true quarter mile stretch?
Yeah. So you really can't do that. Those things that we kind of refer to as the rumble strips. They're the warrants for those are typically when you're in a curve or you're exiting in a curve and you're in a slowing down to something along straightaway. There's really nothing that can be done. You know, we're still continuing to look at that stretch to see if there's enough asphalt out there from a width standpoint to introduce some geometry, just not have it as a straight road. And if we were able to introduce some geometry down the center, we might be able to have rumble strips where if somebody, I mean, not rumble strips in terms of raised, but more like you see on shoulders where they're ground into the asphalt, but it's just taking the road and ever so slightly twisting it and turning it. And we're just having to see what we have out there from a footprint of width of asphalt versus striping. But to do that, you almost have to resurface the entire stretch of the road.
But also change the curbing, would you? And that
There's
would take-
there's no curbing out there.
There's not.
Yeah. So I mean, again, and it's just based on the speed, how much geometry you can put in it. You're not going to be able to put a lot. I mean, just look at it from a common sense standpoint, but it just wouldn't be straight. So if you could just imagine a slow sweeping curve, you may not realize it when you're driving across the Bayway. The Bayway is a nice, big, long, slow sweeping curve. It's not really straight.
How much cost are we talking
It's $300,000-$400,000 probably to resurface the whole thing.
and the curb can be done within that 300,000 or 400,000.
No, if you went to curbs, I'd have to go to pen and paper to put a number on that.
I'm not talking about concrete curb and gutter 6-inch raise. I'm talking about the curve, the curvature.
Yeah, well, the curvature. I mean, the main reason you'd be resurfacing it was be to cover up all the striping that's out there. You know, we can't realistically go out there and just cover that much of striping up without it being. You would just see it. I mean, you would still see the underlying stripes.
So $300,000 or $400,000 would resolve our problem.
I'm not going to say it'll resolve your problem. It would put geometry in the road. You know, whether or not it would slow people down. I mean, I can't speak to bad behavior.
Real quick, Nick. I've had I guess I don't know how I saw this. I just brought it back. Was at any point was there speed tables out there? Because I want to say we saw an email come across claiming or saying that in the 90s there was speed tables and with the resurfacing.
No, in the last iteration of paving out there was a desire to get a pedestrian or bicycle facility out there where you could do it. And so my recollection was that it was maybe 4 lanes, and we striped it down to just 2 and left those wider shoulders, you know, for pedestrians to be able to utilize. That's correct.
Just a follow-up question. Are these all cars, or are there any motorcycles doing this? Or is it both? Or
We haven't caught any of the racing, so I couldn't tell you. The ones that we have stopped have been vehicles.
been vehicles? Not. Okay. Anybody else have anything to talk about with the drag racing? So, Chief, Director, I'm guessing where we are on this is just continue monitoring and enforcement.
Yeah.
Yeah, as best as possible, as often as you can. And if we do hear, or if the public hears of any other areas in town where this is going on, to please notify the police department so that you all can go out there and check that one out as well.
Yes.
So that if it's going on elsewhere. Okay. All right, thanks. The other topic today is the red light running. And this, of course, came about because we had a couple of really tragic accidents recently, resulted in death, and they were due to running red lights. And we all know, if you drive anywhere in Mobile, in particular, some of the busier thoroughfares, you see people running red lights all the time. You know, we tell people at our meetings, and it's not really a joke at all, even though, you know, it might be taken as such, but if you are the first one in line at a busy intersection in front of the light. When it turns green, you sit there. I mean, it's just kind of common knowledge in town because so many people are running the red lights and you don't want to be the one who goes out on green and gets, hit in the side. So with that in mind, I'm going to turn it back over to the chief because you all just did your blitz
We did.
and it looked like a whole lot of citations were written.
It was, there were more than 400 citations and warnings issued. Nearly 200 of those were for red lights. It was a 2-day event and we plan on doing it again soon, probably in the coming weeks, if not the first part of October.
And you were at how many intersections?
We picked the top 12
You
intersections.
picked the top 12.
Yes.
And it was pretty much all day, but they were not sedentary.
No, they were all day, 6:30 to 6:30, moving, working all their intersections.
Yeah, but they had to move around a little
Yeah.
bit.
Oh, yes, they
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
But it was
Okay.
successful. Hopefully it curbs it some, and then we plan on running it again soon.
I wonder what the reactions were of the people who were stopped. Anybody have any stories to tell about, when somebody was stopped with that red light running? John, did you hear anybody say, "Oh yeah, red light"?
You hear the usual excuses. I thought it was still a little bit yellow. I thought it was, I didn't realize I turned, it was going red, just a number of different things.
So normal kind of excuses. So Chief, since you're here, and we do hear a lot of people talk about, well, the light was yellow. I thought I could make it. If you see a yellow light, what do you do?
You're slow down, prepare to stop.
Prepare to stop.
Yes. It's not trying to rush through it.
It's not, pedal to the metal sort of a
Right.
thing.
No, it's not.
We don't issue them when the light turns red while they're in the intersection. We issue them when the light turns red and then they cross the stop bar. So if they are across that stop bar when the light turns red, then that's proceed through.
Can we get John up to the microphone so you can say that again so that everybody can hear you? I think that's good information.
I was just saying, we do not issue citations for running a red light if the light turns red while the vehicle's in the intersection. What we monitor is the cycle of the light. When the light turns red, we look at that crossbar, stop bar. And if the car passes that stop bar at that point after the light turns red, that's when we issue the citation. It's a solid, when you pull up to an intersection, depending on whether it's a turn lane, they may be offset a little bit and then the travel lanes, but there'll be a solid white line about 12 inches wide. And that's on most all intersections that have asphalt with new enough paint, pavement where the paint fairly recent and not worn out. But yeah, most intersections have a visible stop bar.
When you all did the blitz last week, were most of them just going under the light? It was already red and they were flying under the light. Is that what most everybody found?
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. Like I said, we had a briefing at roll call to make sure they understood that we're not going to be issuing anything that's questionable. And so, yes, we watched the cycle of light, and then if the light turns red, we turn back and face our attention to the bar. Vehicle passes it, and then they're obviously in violation because most intersections, there's a few seconds of a delay from the time this one turns red before this one turns green to allow the intersection to clear. And in some cases, you don't have to see the intersection of what their light's doing to know that you've got a green light, had it for a few seconds, and then somebody comes by. Obviously, they're running a red light.
And again, so that everybody can hear it on the microphone, when your officers were stopping people last week that were running the red lights, what were the excuses that they were given?
A lot of them just various excuses. Most of them just thought it was still yellow. Or one of them, you said, I thought it was still a little bit yellow. And I don't understand exactly what that means, but
A little bit.
a little bit yellow. So it's usually the usual things that they just thought that they would say they didn't realize that it was yellow. One argued that it was still yellow.
But they'll pay attention next time.
Probably.
Okay. All right.
Next few.
Next few. Thank you. Appreciate it.
you.
Appreciate y'all being out there.
Question.
William?
Where was the highest concentration of runners?
Well, like you said, we focused on 12 major intersections, but we wasn't completely static on every intersection all the time. We had all of our motors out. So as you can imagine, it gets pretty hot out there. So we would have to cool the bikes off and get some air flowing. So we would patrol in some of the intersections we wrote. were not actually on those 12 major intersections, but they were in the area. So we focused mostly the Airport Boulevard corridor, University, Cottage Hill, things like that. What you would imagine, what you could have always imagined being the most busy intersections. And those busy intersections obviously create the higher number of traffic crashes. So that's what we based our efforts on.
So no broad in government.
We did not come down that far. No, sir.
But
We
you had
focused
like
on-
the top 12 intersections where most of the accidents.
That was based on the number of crashes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how you came up with the intersections.
Do you want the intersection that we covered?
Yeah, why don't you read them off so that,
The worst one was Airport and University with 57 crashes. University Ziegler, 45 crashes. University Old Shell, 39 crashes. Cottage Hill Schillenders, 36 crashes. Airport Schillenders, 35. Cottage Hill Hillcrest, 31 crashes. Dolphin and Springdale, 30 crashes. Cottage Hill Dawes, 28 crashes. House Ferry and Schillenders, 27, which that was really not a very busy intersection. We didn't really have a lot of violations of that one. Greenlight Hillcrest had 27 crashes. Azalea Cottage Hill, 26, and Airport and Hillcrest, 26.
Are those all crashes as a result of someone running a red light?
Not all of them.
but your statistics are coming from the most dangerous intersections
Correct.
in the city. And are those numbers from just like last year or
Or they're over the past year to date. That's
the past
correct.
year to date?
And some of the crashes could be a lot of those yield lanes, and where somebody starts to start in traffic and then they change their mind and the person runs in the back of them. And that very well could be related to a red light. It's just hard to tell why they ought to all of a sudden stop. It could be somebody was coming through the intersection late and they hit their brakes or whatever reason, but it could be a lot of distracted drivers. We do have a lot of texting and driving issues in Mobile, so it could be that as well. So.
Okay, Josh?
Just to follow up on that, there was ancillary tickets associated with the red light. Isn't and again, I listen to news more than I watch news, but Alabama just made a big push, I guess, for a you can't have a cell phone in your hand while you're driving. Was some of those tickets that were issued, is that kind of associated with that, or is that one of those that?
Yes, we did have a lot of miscellaneous tickets. Our main focus was red light violations, with a secondary focus on failure to register paper tags. But any other violation that we witnessed while we were out there, we did address that. And texting and driving was one of those violations.
So how much, if a person run a red light, how much is the ticket?
What did I say? 154? 57? 157. Like $20 is like the fine, and the rest of it's court costs.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Joel?
I think we ought to look at the fines. Raising the fines.
What did you say?
We ought to look at raising the fines.
Raising the fines?
I mean, these are behaviors that seriously can impact people's lives, as we've found out recently. And I think maybe if we were levying a heavier fine, it might deter some more of this. But I think there's a very simple solution to this, which I've mentioned before, which is the red light cameras. But I can count noses as well as the next person, and we have insufficient political will at this level or the legislature at this point to implement that solution. So we got to find other ways to do it. But thank you very much, Chief.
Go ahead.
I'd like to tell MPD, you guys, thank y'all for getting right on it, being responsive. There's obviously a big public outcry, a problem that, continues to progress and be a problem. And I appreciate y'all's responsiveness to it and getting out there and, swinging the pendulum back a little bit towards the, law and order. Thank y'all.
Thank you. And we'll continue our efforts as well.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, Madam Vice President, the reason why I asked about the fines and I think enforcement is a key. I remember, I didn't remember how much I don't think I ever got a ticket for running a red light. So I didn't know how much, but I received a ticket when I was in college before on Spring Hill. Yeah, it's been a while. and it was coming down Spring Hill Avenue, and there was a police officer always right there when you coming down. I hit my brake coming down, but I always remember that. And every time I come down Spring Hill, it's like I just have a flashback. When my heart started beating fast, I'm like, the anxiety just come down. Like I cannot get a ticket. But going to Joel Point, I really think we got to start figuring out what we can control. And I think, finding out what ways that if fines does make a difference. Because when I received that, I was like, look, I got to pay attention. I got to make sure I'm following guidelines. But I want to commend the MPD as well thank you for jumping on it, and hopefully like this will start making a difference.
Do we happen to know, have we done any survey to determine what other cities are what the fine is in other cities for running red lights?
Why don't we take a look at that and see, and that might provide us with some ammunition, so to speak, if we start looking at raising the fines.
Yeah, the last 6 months, I mean, this came up about 6 months ago. We started looking at, that's when we were actually concentrating more on trying to see how to get the red light cameras in the city. We found out that with the local legislations, that there's not much of an appetite to passing that type of legislation. So we can look at what the fines are in other cities as well. But again, Councilman Davis is 100% correct. We need to change the behavior. And if we can't do it with red light cameras, we probably have to look at other ways such as fines or things of that nature.
Anybody else with anything else? Director, I don't want to open up a can of worms or anything, but it's been mentioned about the red light cameras. Can you just give us a brief overview, pros, cons, and why there doesn't appear to be interest legislatively to pursue that? Briefly. Briefly. Kind of keep the lid half on.
I am not sure why the legislature do not want to use that technique. It is being used in some other cities around Alabama with that local legislation. There is some due process concerns, but through the course of red light cameras in this country, those have been worked out, and they can be worked out without putting myself in other jurisdictions. I have been caught with at least speeding with a camera, and it's a civil fine, and then you have to pay it and you move on. But I won't speak from why they just have been told us no, and they're not going to sponsor local legislation. But I think it's a tremendous tool for changing behaviors. And from my personal knowledge and what I've talked to other people, it does change behaviors, at least around those specific intersections. And as you said, I've showed you they've gave you the top 10 intersections for accidents. We've also done some other additional research. State Farm has basically put a danger index on different intersections. And, in both cases, Airport and University is the most dangerous, appears to be the most dangerous intersection in the city of Mobile. And I think out of the top 6, 4 of them are on Airport Boulevard.
Makes sense, yeah. Anybody else? Chief, Director, anybody? Okay. Well, thank you all for coming. A short meeting, but good information provided. Thank you so much for being here.